Welcome to today's web seminar. This is Simone Turek from John Burton Advocates for Youth. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to give us just a couple minutes to give people a chance to jump on, and then we'll get started. Again, hello, good morning. Welcome to today's web seminar. This is Simone Turek. I'm the Associate Policy Director with John Burton Advocates for Youth. And today we're going to do a webinar talking about CalFresh, our state's SNAP or food stamps for current and former foster youth students. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about CalFresh for foster youth, CalFresh for students, and then kind of put it all together and gear it towards college campus staff. So if you're joining us from a college campus, this is definitely the information that we think is most relevant to you. But if you're joining us from somewhere else, that's okay too. If you're wanting to just kind of generally know about foster youth in CalFresh or students in CalFresh, this information will be probably quite helpful too. So why don't we get started? All right, so first, just some technical information. So we, with GoToWebinar, the platform that we use, we suggest calling in versus listening through your computer speakers. You can do either, but really if you encounter any audio issues, it's best to try calling in, and you can do that by going to your control panel, kind of uncollapsing the audio drop-down or the audio section, and then selecting phone or call in, I think it says. And then it'll give you this information that's here on the screen. So once I advance from this screen, you can still get this information there. And if at any point you have any technical issues that you think are on our end, so you think that something's going on with our technology over here and you need to let me know, go ahead and enter that information into the chat or the questions box and let me know, we can't hear you or we can't see your screen or, anything that seems to be fishy that's happening. Just let me know. And throughout the web seminar, if you have questions, we will do a question and answer session at the end, and you can submit them in the questions box. Just type in your question, click send, and then I'll be, at the end, I'll go through those and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can. And if there are any questions that I can't answer that might be better directed at the California Department of Social Services or a particular county, or just information that I don't have, I can try to get that information for you and get back to you at a later date. We always post the recordings, so we're recording this web seminar. We always post the recordings and also a copy of the presentation I'll be using today on our website, jbaforyouth.org. It's under Training Archive. And I'll also send out, by the end of day today, to everyone who's registered for this webinar, I'll send out a copy of the recording and the presentation slides so that you have those later today. So kind of as I mentioned here, we're going to talk about CalFresh. We're going to first talk about extended foster care. So I want to make sure that everyone on the web seminar has at least some basic information about extended foster care, because it will help everyone kind of synthesize this information that we've, related to CalFresh, if we have this kind of foundational information about extended foster care. So we'll just a couple slides on extended foster care, a brief overview of CalFresh, and then we'll kind of dive into the nitty-gritty, income, deductions, households, and kind of talk about those things in relation to current and former foster youth. Then we'll do a section on the student eligibility restrictions, which I know is what probably a lot of people working on campuses are experiencing when they talk with youth about their CalFresh applications. They're probably talking about, what are these student eligibility restrictions and what are all of the exemptions that can make it so that a student is not being restricted from eligibility. And there are many exemptions, so we'll talk about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about assisting youth with the CalFresh application process, just some tips for how you can help them and things that they should know, and then we'll do our question and answer. So first, just to kind of frame today, why are we talking about this? You know, we know that current and former foster youth, and particularly those who, you know, are students, you know, they might not be working, they might be working, but maybe earning very little. We know that there's food insecurity. We know that youth do need financial support. They're transition age youth. Most people of that age group do, and these are current and former foster youth who do not have the parental support that many students do. So it's important that we help youth access things that they're eligible for, such as CalFresh. And when we look at the data, so this is from the Cal Youth Study that Chapin Hall is conducting, has been conducting over the past several years on extended foster care. The Cal Youth Study found that 1 in 3 non-minor dependents, so youth participating in extended foster care, reported having ever received CalFresh benefits. So, you know, at any point in their life, did they ever receive the benefits? So just 1 in 3. And at the time of their interview, where this data was collected, 4 in 5 non-minor dependents were not currently receiving CalFresh. So we know that the common experience is for youth in extended foster care to not be receiving CalFresh, although, you know, the vast majority are likely, you know, many are likely eligible. And the Chapin Hall Cal Youth Study also found that youth in care were significantly less likely than youth who exited care to have ever received CalFresh benefits. And we're talking about same age youth. So for example, a 19-year-old who was still chose to remain in extended foster care compared to a 19-year-old who chose to exit foster care, that those who exited were more likely to have received CalFresh benefits. But we do know that many foster youth are eligible, and that over the past, you know, several years, you know, since extended foster care has been implemented, you know, in 2012 was when the phased in implementation started. There's definitely been discrepancies and confusion across the state about foster youth eligibility. And so luckily in the past kind of year or two, that's really come to light, and a lot of people are trying to work towards clearing up the misconceptions, making clarifications. State has issued, you know, several notices to counties to make sure that they have the information they need to help determine eligibility for foster youth. So that's the good news. See if I can advance the slide. It's not moving. There we go. So first, just an overview of extended foster care. Like I said, this will be brief for those who are like, I already know this information. Well, you know, not everybody does. So let's help everybody get on the same page here. So extended foster care was established by Assembly Bill 12, the California Fostering Connections to Success Act. It did a number of things. Kind of the most famous thing it did was extend foster care to age 21 in California, and this allowed our state to take advantage of the opportunity to draw down federal foster care funding beyond age 18 after a federal bill passed allowing this in 2008. And so, you know, since 2012, basically our foster care system has changed a lot. We now have non-minors in foster care, you know, legal adults. So upon turning 18, eligible youth can continue in foster care. It is not required. You know, they're legal adults. They make their own decisions. It is optional. And if they choose to leave the system, they can re-enter up to age 21. And what we're finding in California is that the vast majority of youth are choosing to stay in care. They are recognizing that having additional support, both financial and kind of social, emotional, and skills-based support is necessary and is needed for young people as they kind of transition into their adulthood. And then youth, just kind of technical information here. So youth that we call non-minor dependents, there's kind of three kind of jurisdictions here. You could say one is the dependency jurisdiction. So basically youth who are supervised by the Child Welfare Agency. They've been, you know, in the foster care system at some point up until their 18th birthday, and they're supervised by, you know, they have a social worker, they're supervised by the Child Welfare Agency. There are also youth who are supervised by the probation department. They're youth who came into contact with, the law basically as juveniles, were probably, in juvenile hall at some point. And then when they came out and they went to court, the court said, you know what, it is not in, your best interest to go home, or going home is not something that's an option for you right now. And so we're placing you in an out-of-home placement. So essentially in foster care, but there's no, foster care case opened on them. It's not like, oh, we're going to substantiate some sort of abuse happening at home and we're opening a foster care case on you. No, it's more about, the court is looking at the bigger picture and the whole case and the youth and the family and saying it is a better option for you to be in out-of-home care at the moment. So then they maybe go to a group home or somewhere like that. And so those youth, if they have an order for out-of-home placement on their 18th birthday, they are also eligible for extended foster care. So those youth are supervised. They have a probation officer. They're supervised by the probation department. But legally, they're considered, non-minor dependents in extended foster care. And then there's a third kind of little category, which is youth that are under transition jurisdiction. And that's when the youth that are on the probation side, they've fulfilled the terms of their probation. And maybe they're like 17 and a half, or maybe they've turned 18, and they don't want to lose eligibility for extended foster care. And so we changed the status of their jurisdiction to be what we call transition jurisdiction. So they're no longer on probation, but they're still eligible for extended foster care. So those are our non-minor dependents. And then, like I said, they're either supervised by child welfare or probation. The main extended foster care placements, and when I say main, there's kind of the one-offs, but these are definitely what you'll really see most commonly, particularly the bottom two. So the first top orange one, the resource family, these are family-based settings. It's really what you need to know. These are all the family-based settings. So there's some people have, their aunt or their grandmother or some sort of other relative that they're in placement with. Some are in a county foster home. Some are in a foster family agency certified foster home. Those are both just different types of foster homes. Some are in a guardianship, but it's a guardianship where there's still a dependency case open. And so they are in extended foster care versus a guardianship where the dependency case has been closed and where they're just in a guardianship and they're not in extended foster care. But for all, purposes for today, there's kind of the family-based setting. On the right-hand upper right orange corner, there's what we call short-term residential therapeutic program. And that is basically a new placement under continuum of care reform that is it's been established at this point, and group homes are being phased out. If you didn't hear, basically group homes are going to be no longer really in a few months, and what we will see as far as the congregate care settings are kind of more comprehensive treatment programs that are providing kind of short-term intensive kind of therapeutic services. And, when AB 12 passed, there was in the law, basically, there was in the negotiation, group homes were kind of taken off the table for non-minors. And they were only allowed to remain in group homes kind of under certain conditions and for a short-term basis. And so, this is not really, a placement that we see as a main placement for extended foster care, but the truth is that at least 10% of youth, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know at least 10% of non-minor dependents are still, living in group homes as of, this past year. So it is a placement that you do still see. And then the bottom two placements are really what we're going to focus on today. They're the two new placements that came about with extended foster care. And they were the placements where, people said, we need to come up with something that's obviously more age appropriate and for these adults that are going to be in foster care. They need to be independent settings where they're more similar to what youth their own age would be doing if they weren't living at home. So there's the Transitional Housing Placement Foster Care Program, THP+FC, as everyone will probably be calling it. You can probably hear it. And this program was modeled after an existing program that I'll talk about a little later, but it basically provides, transitional kind of housing, like apartment living, shared living with roommates usually, and there are supportive services provided by an organization that is the housing provider. And that includes case management, regular checking in. And then the least supervised, or the least kind of the most independent placement, is what we call, and it's kind of funny because it's called the Supervised Independent Living Placement, but it's the least supervised. And we call this the SILP. And this is where youth are living, independently with roommates. Maybe they're renting a room. It can look many different ways, kind of physically in the setting that they're in, but they're basically in this placement on their own, as far as, they still have their social worker visiting them, but there's no organization providing the program. There's no supportive services. They are, renting or living somewhere, kind of with the support of their social workers, monthly visits, but there isn't like the case management that happens in the transitional housing placement. And some SILPs, as you guys probably know, are in dorms. So if you're a youth in a dorm in college, that is your SILP placement. So a little more about THP+FC. There are 3 types of housing models. Under THP+FC, there's the I'll start on the left here, the host family. So this is kind of the least common model, and this is a model that is very different than the other 2. It is where the housing provider basically arranges for the non-minor dependent to live in a kind of a rented room with a host family, kind of like when you have families hosting exchange students, kind of similar concept. They're not foster parents, they are a host family, and the youth still receives supportive services from that housing provider. And they, check in regularly with the youth and with the host family. And then there's the single site, and this is for THP+FC. This is a stacked site, so it's, for example, one apartment building or one large, home on a property that where the housing provider owns or leases apartments or rooms like in a single facility, and there's an employee of the program that's living on site. So they might have kind of like an RA in a dorm. They might have an apartment unit in the building, and again, they're provided supportive services. And on the right-hand side, the remote site. This is the most common model and the most independent model in THP+FC, where youth are living in scattered, apartments throughout the community. So it's just, the provider might have be leasing a number of different apartments throughout the community. They're then and subleasing them to the youth. They're still providing those intensive supportive services and checking in regularly. So the THP+FC payment. So the way foster care works, the county provides a payment to the kind of caretaker or the housing provider in this case, and this payment covers a number of things. It covers room and board for that young person, administrative costs, staffing costs, all of that stuff. That's what the rate is intended to cover. So with the THP+FC program here, or placement here, for a staffed or remote site, you see it's at $3,209. For a host family, it's $2,553, and that goes per youth per month to the provider. The provider then takes that money, they use a portion of it for all of their administrative costs and staffing costs, and then and obviously paying the rent and all of that, kind of the room and board. And then they provide a stipend, or an allowance, you could call it, to the youth. And usually those providers are giving that twice a month. But so, there's this monthly amount that's basically of that money that's going to the youth. And on average, it's like $500 or $600. Because, things are covered for the youth. So they're not paying, their rent. They're not paying a lot of the living costs that youth in SILPs, for example, are paying. But they do need, obviously, living money to cover their basic needs. And then a lot of youth are also working to supplement the money that they're receiving. And there is one provider in our state that provides, I think, like $1,500, and they expect youth to then pay the rent and everything. So it's a slightly different model. But in most cases, you'll see the amount being much smaller. So the Supervised Independent Living Placement. So again, the most independent type of placement. There is a second option, though, for SILPs. Youth can, like I said, live with roommates or rent a room. It can be very independent, or they can actually also live in a SILP with a supportive adult. So they could have an aunt or a family friend or somebody who who they are essentially living with as their kind of support person. But the idea is they're still living, you know, independent in the sense that this is that person's not like a foster parent to them, but it's you know, an older adult that is providing them some sort of support and maybe like skills development, hopefully. So youth that want to be placed in a SILP or who are placed in a SILP, they must pass what they call a readiness assessment. Every county might have a slightly different version of what this looks like, but it basically determines that they're capable of living independently. And it has to be approved by the social worker or the probation officer. And this is the one placement where you can receive the foster care payment directly. It's currently $923 a month. And that's what the basic rate is. It's the basic rate because there's no administrative cost. There's no money going to a program. It's all going directly to the youth. If they don't want to receive it directly or they're not deemed ready, a payee can receive this. So lastly, I just want to talk about the THP+ program. This is not a foster care placement. This is a program that's been around in statute since 2001, really been present in our state since probably about 2006 or something. But it's a program for former foster youth, and it came obviously about before extended foster care. So it was for youth ages 18 to 24. At this point, youth are really more accessing it between 21 and 24 because youth are opting mainly to stay in extended foster care. But it provides, you know, 24 months of affordable housing and supportive services to former foster youth and probation youth ages 18 to 24. And in some counties who have opted into an extension for youth enrolled in school, they can provide those youth with up to 36 months and or up to age 25, whichever comes first, those services. THP+FC was modeled after this program, so the housing models are virtually identical. The only differences are the single site, the THP+ program does not have a staff member living there, and the remote site is called the scattered site in THP+, but same type of housing model. And again, similar, you know, the county is receiving a THP+, or excuse me, the provider is receiving a THP+, you know, rate from the county, and it's kind of portioned out in the same way as with THP+FC. So an overview of CalFresh. So what is CalFresh? You know, historically we've called, you know, formerly called CalFresh food stamps. So like when we were growing up, you know, this was called food stamps, but it's just a different name, CalFresh. They rebranded, and federally, you know, this is known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP. And this is a federal, 100% federally funded program. You know, and it's an entitlement program. One of the few left, right? And it provides monthly electronic benefits to households that meet certain income eligibility standards. And it can be used at most markets and food stores to buy most foods, but it can't be used to purchase like hot and ready to eat foods or alcohol, tobacco, medication, supplements, stuff like that are not allowed, but most other things are. And it's administered by the USDA, and then at the state level, it's administered by the California Department of Social Services, and then California's, you know, each of California's 58 counties have kind of local administrative authority in how they administer the program. So general eligibility, you know, the amount of CalFresh benefits that a household gets really depends on a number of factors. So how many people are in the household? What is the monthly gross income, and then what is the monthly net income? And basically, you know, the gross income is all non-excludable income from any source. That includes both earned and unearned income, which we'll go into a little bit later. And there's the threshold at which you know, for most households, the monthly gross income must be at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. Now, then there are these deductions that you can take. So households can deduct certain expenses from their gross income, and then that determines their net income. And we'll talk about what those deductions are. But so the net income is the monthly income after the deductions are taken into account. And for all households, the monthly net income must be at or below 100% of the federal poverty level. So what are the income limits here for gross income? So let's look at the middle column first. So So, and just to give you a little bit of background, so the maximum gross income allowed is technically 130% of the federal poverty level. However, CDSS applies a gross income limit of 200%, for our state because of a policy called modified categorical eligibility. So basically, a TANF-funded benefit is made available to all CalFresh recipients, and then CDSS applies the gross income limit of that benefit, which is 200%, the federal poverty level. And this is also why our state doesn't tend to apply the resource or the asset test to households. So we do things a little differently. And then again, the net income, 100% of the federal poverty level. And you can see, it varies at the household size, what the income limits are. So basically, if you make at or below these levels, you might be eligible, for CalFresh. But if you exceed them, then you won't be eligible. And these change each federal fiscal year. So maximum benefits that you can receive. So this is the maximum monthly allotment. So if a youth applies for CalFresh, they're not going to receive any more than this. So like for one person, that's $194 a month. But basically, it really depends. Yeah, it depends on how many people are in the household, but it also depends on how much monthly net income remains after taking allowable deductions. So basically, the county welfare department takes the maximum amount of CalFresh benefits a household can get for the number of people in the household, and then deducts 30% of the household's net income. So this basically means that for every $10 of net income the household has, the CalFresh office will reduce the CalFresh allotment by $3. So that's kind of how you see, and you don't need to obviously know all those details, but just to kind of understand why youth qualify for these varying amounts, it really has to do with a formula that they use. So let's start talking specifically about current former foster youth and CalFresh here. So deductions. And deductions are not specific to current former foster youth, but I wanted to include this in this section because I wanted to kind of flag the deductions for you that are more common for current and former foster youth. So I've bolded those that I think are probably the more common deductions for this population, and put a little asterisk next to them. But so everyone gets, basically all CalFresh recipients have an allowable deduction of 20%, the earned income deduction. So this means, if they're working. So this means that non-minor dependents who are working can automatically deduct 20% of the amount they earn from wages or salaries to calculate their net income. Okay, so that's one deduction to definitely know about. Then there's a standard deduction. So everyone gets the standard deduction. For households of 1 to 3 people, for example, this deduction for federal fiscal year 2018 is $160. So everyone can deduct that when calculating their net income. There's a standard utility, and I'm just going over the ones in bold because the other ones we don't need to go over those today. Standard utility allowance. So when utility costs are separate from the rent payment, the CalFresh recipient is eligible for this deduction. So a non-minor dependent who pays any utility bill separate from their rent payment, so making a payment directly to the utility company, for example, is allowed the standard utility allowance, which is currently $397. And then lastly, dependent care. So this is the actual cost of payments necessary for dependent care if that care enables a household member to accept or continue employment or training or education preparatory for employment. So a non-minor dependent who pays for childcare, when that childcare enables them to work or attend training or education preparatory for work, they should deduct their childcare costs to determine their net income. So what kinds of income aren't counted? So this is also very important to know. In-kind benefits, so benefits that are not in the form of money, those are not counted as income. Vendor payments, so money paid to a third party for a household expense by a person or organization outside of the household, is disregarded from income as well. And so this includes, and we'll talk about this later, but the youth is getting this direct stipend from the provider, but if the provider is, paying the rent for them, that's a vendor payment. So that's not something that should be counted for the youth. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but kind of thinking about how vendor payments are kind of relevant to our population, that's how they're relevant. Deferred educational loans and grants and scholarships, those are all disregarded from income. So, don't forget to tell youth, their grants and scholarships, do not count those as income on their application. Cash donations from a charitable organization of not more than $300 in a calendar quarter, and then income received too infrequently or irregularly to be reasonably anticipated, but not more than $30 in a quarter. So this is something to just kind of conceptually to wrap your head around when you're thinking about youth applying for CalFresh. So households apply for CalFresh, and we actually did a question of the week on this morning in our newsletter, if you get it, to kind of tease this up a little bit. But how does this work when youth are living in these shared arrangements where they're living with roommates who they're not necessarily eating with and sharing with on a kind of cohabitation level? They're literally just roommates that have been placed together in the same housing. So what do they do? So, the rule of thumb here, in shared living arrangements where meals are purchased and prepared together, so this would be, for example, in like a family-based setting. So maybe if you're living with a foster parent, the head of household would apply for CalFresh benefits on behalf of the entire household, right? So, if you're living with a foster parent, you're a youth, you're not going to apply for your own CalFresh benefits because you're likely, it's a more family-based setting. You're likely doing some shared, cooking and purchasing and preparing meals. And it would also probably be a little bit harder to, quite honestly, pass the sniff test, when they're applying. It's a little less straightforward. I'm not saying that that the youth couldn't apply and that they wouldn't get benefits, but I think it's a lot less common for in this scenario for them to apply as a household of one. However, in the shared living arrangements where meals are purchased and prepared separately, so maybe in a SILP or in THP+FC or in THP+ for former foster youth, each individual might apply for CalFresh benefits separately, so they as a household of one. And just to clarify something else for you, for youth who are living in these family-based settings, there is in regulations, and this is very old. This is before extended foster care came about, and you had foster parents that had foster children, and those foster parents were applying for CalFresh. There's an option for a household to exclude a foster child from their household, meaning when they're applying for benefits, they're not going to count that person as an additional household member, but they're also not going to count any income associated with that person. So, for example, if a non-minor dependent is living in a foster home and that foster home thinks it's in their best interest kind of financially to apply for CalFresh, but not counting them in the household on their application, not only are they not counting them like it's 3 instead of 4 people, but they're also not counting the income that they're that person is bringing in. However, if they are counted as part of the household, their income has to be counted. Each household member is looked at as a person that might be contributing to that household. However, with household size 1, so you have a SILP or a THP+FC where someone's applying for CalFresh just for themselves, household of 1. Obviously, they're not going to exclude themselves because you would have no household then. So that rule really only applies to these households where it's more than 1%. But the kind of important thing to know, the rule of thumb here, is if the youth is living with roommates and they are purchasing and preparing food separately, meals separately, they should apply for CalFresh just on behalf of themselves. So counting income. So this is really important. Counting income for current and former foster youth. So the earned income, generally is the wages that someone receives from employment. Now, this has just very recently, something's come to light, and this is in federal, SNAP regulations, but it's something that I think no one really noticed after extended foster care was implemented. Nobody thought about how this made sense in terms of non-minor dependents applying for CalFresh, and then very recently, someone at the state kind of noticed it and said, hey, there's this federal regulation. And what it says is, if on the Transitional Independent Living Plan, which all youth have, it's called their TILP, all youth have this that are in foster care. If on this plan, employment is listed as a goal, the income that they receive from that employment can be disregarded as income. So this is very important, but also tricky because the counties have not received guidance from the state on this yet. So good to know for all of you And youth can absolutely, this can be raised with each county, but it's going to be tricky because kind of, I think, until the state issues some official guidance about this, kind of saying to the counties, hey, by the way, this regulation does exist. The counties aren't going to have a way of like, they're not informed about this at this point. Some might be that are really, very well versed on SNAP regulations, but it's likely that they're going to go, I'm not sure, I don't know about this. So hopefully in the near future, I'd love to see, the state issue an ACIN or an ACL flagging this for counties, but kind of until then, this information is not widely known. But it is real, and it is a federal regulation, and that is what it says. Unearned income. So any foster care or program stipend received directly by the youth. So for example, in the SILP, if they're receiving that $923 directly to themselves, that is their unearned income. If they're in THP+FC and they're receiving, $450 a month as their stipend, that is what is considered their unearned income. It is not the entire foster care rate paid to the provider, because the rest of that is considered a vendor payment. It is just the amount that they receive directly. Okay. Treatment of gift cards. So this is important because some youth do receive gift cards as their kind of monthly stipend. They might, instead of a check or cash or something, they might receive like a grocery store gift card or something like that. So it's important to know how these are counted. So there's three ways to look at this. So the first is what's counted as income. Gift cards are only counted as income in a very narrow circumstance. And this is per, by the way, this is per federal SNAP regulations as well, but this is also mentioned in terms of non-minor dependents in a recent ACIN that the state put out. So you can see it there, but the federal SNAP regulations do say this about gift cards. So the credit card company prepaid gift cards, so like the American Express card, the MasterCard card, the Visa gift card, those ones that you get that are almost like cash, right? Or they are like cash. Those gift cards, if they can be reasonably anticipated by the youth, meaning like they get it on the 5th of every month, they get a $30 Visa gift card on the 5th of every month, then that would be counted as income. However, if they get a credit card company prepaid gift card that cannot be reasonably anticipated, so it's a random, like a gift or just here we have this extra gift card, you can have this, then it would be counted as a resource, but we don't really, our state doesn't really do the resource asset test, so it's not I think that important. But then on the right-hand side, it's important to know that what's excluded entirely from income and resources are establishment-specific gift cards. So like a Target gift card or a Chevron gift card or a grocery store gift card like Safeway or Vons or whatever you have near you. So that's gift cards. However, on a similar note, information for campuses. So when you guys are providing students educational assistance, so through your programs, maybe like stipends or book vouchers or gift cards or emergency funds, the lender or third party, so you guys, may earmark the funds to be used for educational purposes, so that then they would be excluded from income. So if this was a regular prepaid company credit card gift card that they were getting that could have been seen as income, you can earmark that for educational purposes, and then it would be excluded. So let's talk about student eligibility restrictions and exemptions. So generally speaking, students enrolled half-time in institutions of higher education are generally not eligible for CalFresh unless they meet certain criteria or are exempt from the requirements. Let me unpack that a little bit. So half-time students in college are usually not eligible for CalFresh unless they meet certain criteria or are exempt from it, right? However, youth participating in extended foster care are exempt from these restrictions. Additionally, many former foster youth are exempt. So I want to talk about kind of how this works and why they're exempt. So CalFresh defines a college student as someone who's between 18 and 49 like I said, enrolled at least half-time in college. Basically those, if someone fits that definition, they either have to meet this work requirement, basically, which you see on the upper right-hand corner in the light blue box, or they have to be exempt from the requirements, which is in the dark blue box. So the work requirement is that someone would have to work 20 hours per week or average 80 hours per month. And if they're not doing that, you know, if they meet certain other criteria, they might be exempt still. So examples of the exemptions are being a parent with a dependent child under 6, participating in a program to increase employability. Now that's the magic exemption criteria, because that's what's opening up, we'll see on the next slide, all of these current and former foster youth that are kind of being exempted from this restriction, or physically or mentally unfit for employment. So those are kind of some major exemption categories. Now I want to unpack the second bullet on the dark blue slide a little bit for you. So like I said, if you're meeting the work requirement, 20 hours per week, you're fine, right? But what if you're not doing that? So all of these bullets under here are things that could exempt a student from being restricted from CalFresh eligibility, a college student. I've asterisked the ones that are, what they are is they fall under the exemption of participating in a state-funded program that increases employability. So long story short, kind of the state, there was a work group that came together to figure out some ways in California, some programs that might be examples of increasing employability, to try to figure out ways to, you know, make college students more eligible for CalFresh, because many of them need it. And so, as you can see, and I'll just go over the asterisk ones. So participating in extended foster care, that's the biggest one, because all of foster youth, 18 to 21, they're all exempt. None of them have to worry about this student eligibility restriction. So when they go to apply for CalFresh, you know, if they're told, oh, you're a college student, you don't qualify, they can say, actually, I'm exempt from that restriction because I'm participating in extended foster care. Additionally, a lot of these other categories, former foster youth will fall into as well. So just on this page alone, you know, you can see things here that they might fall into, particularly like receiving a Chafee grant, receiving Cal grants, you know, being a parent, a certain type of parent. And then if you look on the next slide, it goes on and on, right? So participating in a foster youth campus support program. So Guardian Scholars, FYSI, and I know FYSI isn't like a campus support program in the same way that a Guardian Scholars program is. It's not like you know, you're not part of the program in the same way, but the way that the way the ACL was written on this, like basically, you know, if you're going and meeting with the FYSI liaison, you're participating in that program. K-fees are next up. And, you know, there's also all the general campus support programs that aren't specific to foster youth, the EOPS, EOP, DSPS, CARE, McNair, Fuente, Mesa, you know, all of these programs, these can all exempt someone from the student restriction on eligibility, right? The WIOA programs. So you can see that there are many ways to be exempted. Because some programs, some campus support programs have, you know, unique names that aren't listed on the ACL. Like they aren't just like, you know, Guardian Scholars is a very common foster youth support program name, but some have these very specific names that are only at their campus. They might not be listed in the ACL, right? So basically, campuses can get their programs approved as programs to increase employability by contacting CDSS. And I understand it's a very easy process. I think you just basically submit a form that says why it increases employability, what the name is, and, you know, a couple other pieces of information, and then you can get it approved so that it can be one of the exemption criteria. So let's talk about assisting youth with the CalFresh application process. So the process on a very kind of some overview level here, they can apply online. You can also go into the county welfare office. I would say nowadays it's probably way more common to do this online. And if I was doing it, I definitely would want to do it online. But youth can also go in. I understand in some cases it can also be done over the phone, but most commonly, you know, you're going to go to that URL, figure out which online portal your county uses, and submit the application that way. So you'll do that. After your application is submitted, the youth will complete a phone interview. Then they'll be asked for some documents to verify eligibility. And my understanding is that on the online application, there is an opportunity to actually just upload some documents. So I think that can be done, I believe, when they submit the application, but there can also be the follow-up within the 30 days to get them submitted, because they may not know everything that they need. And then after, and so the application is basically, the process is 30 days, but then there are these semi-annual and then annual reports that do have to be submitted to basically kind of re-verify or reconsider and re-verify their eligibility if they're remaining on CalFresh for an extended period. So some application tips. So one thing that people ask a lot is, so, once the application is submitted, the youth, like I said, the youth completes an interview over the phone. And one thing is like, well, what if the youth misses the call, or, what if their number changes before they get the call? So one thing is that the youth can reschedule the interview if they miss the call, or are unable to conduct the interview at the scheduled time. But of course, my recommendation is don't, just make sure you pick that phone up. Try not to have your phone number change, try to get it done. That would be my advice. Oftentimes the interview would be an incoming call from a blocked number. So just like, I know you don't like picking up blocked numbers, just for the next week, I'd suggest you pick up your blocked numbers, so just kind of giving them tips, and then, but saying, hey, but if you do miss the call because, maybe you were in the shower or you were working or whatever, people miss calls. It can be rescheduled. And what I do understand is that once you submit your application, there's, I believe, like a local office and contact number that shows up on the screen. So it would be a good idea for you to write down this information so that, like, if their number changes or they need to reschedule, that they can know who to contact to provide this new information. And then youth, like I said, they'll be asked for a number of verification documents. Some of them will be pretty basic, I think, like proof of address and stuff like that, or like, oh, you pay this utility bill, let me see proof of the utility bill. But some of the more complicated things you might be able to help with. And what those kind of, other things are, for, I guess, most basically, income. So for a youth and a SILP, you could suggest that they provide a check stub from their foster care payment. For youth in THP+FC, a letter on letterhead from the organization providing the placement, indicating what the monthly stipend amount is. For their earned income, obviously, like a check stub from their paycheck that they've earned from employment. And like I talked about earlier about the TILP, if the youth is working and employment is a goal on their TILP, a copy of their TILP would probably be necessary. And then they do need to provide documentation of their financial aid. And then lastly, this is where you guys might be able to help, if they're needing to prove that their student exemption, and I didn't put this one on here, but if extended foster care is their exemption, I'm sure that they can. I mean, some counties they have data sharing mechanisms where they, CalFresh and child welfare are working together, and they can get information that way. But in some counties, that's not the case. So you might need to, from child welfare, get like your dependency letter or something like that. And maybe even just having the SILP check stub might suffice. I think it might vary from county to county. But if they're, one of the exemption criteria is approved for work study for the current term and intending on working. So like the work study award letter from financial aid. They could also, if they're saying that receiving a Cal grant or a Chafee grant is their exemption criteria, providing a copy of their student aid report. If it's participating in a campus support program, for example, like EOPS or EOP, the mutual responsibility contract, or just printing out a form or printing out a letter or something from the college on letterhead indicating their participation in whatever campus support program that they're in. And it does say in the ACL on student eligibility that if verification is not available, that the student could self-certify via sworn statement or affidavit. But I think that, as far as these student exemptions, they should be able to get something, especially if you guys are helping them out a little bit with accessing this information. And then just some information and resources here. So I've mentioned all county letters and all county information notices that have been put out. So one thing is on student eligibility, there was an all-county letter put out earlier in this year, beginning of the year, 1705, and that link to that is there. And then very recently, there was an ACIN all-county, oops, and I didn't put the URL in for that one. I will update the slide, so when I send it out to you guys, it has the URL, but on CalFresh and foster youth. So a lot of the information I covered on counting income and all of that, that's covered in that all-county information notice. And then just some other resources. So we have a frequently asked questions document that we update with information about CalFresh and non-minor dependents. The only thing that's not in there is the information I mentioned about the TILP. I was kind of trying to wait to see if and when the state was going to put out guidance so we could cite that specifically. So that's not in there, but everything else pretty much is that I've covered today in some form or another. And then the website there is this organization provides a really much more kind of understandable guide. Like instead of sitting and reading CalFresh regulations, it kind of sorts them out for you, and then provides kind of more easier to understand information at the very bottom there. So let's jump into Q&A. I'm just going to pop out these questions. Give me 1 minute. All right. How would DPSS be made aware of youth TILP goals? So, the TILP is an official form that the state uses. So the youth could get a copy of their TILP and provide it to whatever party they need to provide it to. So that's a form that they could print out and show to whomever they need to show it to. And so just a reminder about submitting questions. So if you guys have questions, feel free to enter them into the questions box and then hit send. So I'm not seeing other questions for today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give us a couple more minutes, and if people have questions to submit, they can submit them. And then if not, we can go ahead and end about 5 minutes early. So I'm going to hold on for about another minute and let people enter any questions they might have. I don't want to cut people off who might be slow typers. Okay, so how do we confirm that our school program has been added to the list of accepted programs? I emailed them about a month ago, but never got a confirmation. Yeah, so if the person who submitted this question, and yeah, and some people say same question. So it sounds like we need to contact the state and ask them this question, because if they are not, if you're not getting a response, then how would we know? And I definitely don't have a list for you. So what I'll do, follow up with me directly, and if you can provide me the email that you're emailing, and then I can contact the state and just confirm, like, is this the right place to get this information from, and see if I can get it from them, and then I can get back with you. So I know there's a couple people that have this issue, so feel free to just email me, after the webinar, and let me know that you're having this issue, and then I'll follow up with you when I get that information. In regards to youth who have opted out, former foster youth who is past 21 years old, in case they come in for resources, do they qualify? So youth qualifying for CalFresh is obviously, it's a case-by-case basis. Some will and some won't, and it all depends on, if they're working, how much they're earning. Do they meet, if they're in college more than half time, do they meet any exemption criteria? What is the household size? So it's, like I said, there's a formula they use. And so if this youth is is their gross and their net income is below the those thresholds that I shared earlier, and if they're students, if they meet the exemption criteria, then they should qualify for some level of benefit. And one thing you can do is look back at that table, verify what their monthly income is, look back at that table, and kind of help them determine whether they might qualify. And it never hurts to apply. So even if it's unclear whether they're eligible, they can always apply in the worst case scenario if they don't get benefits, right? Did I hear correctly? A student currently in a foster home environment would have to apply to CalFresh with foster parent being the head of household, as opposed to applying as a household of one. So there's nothing that says, in regulations, you can't apply. If you're in a foster home, you can't apply on behalf of yourself. But kind of the point that I was making earlier was that in most cases, youth are going to be part of that household that's applying. And if they are in a situation where they're in a foster home, but they are purchasing and preparing food entirely separately from their foster family, they could definitely apply. My guess is, though, that the county might kind of go, is this true? They might have a hard time. I don't know. I'm honestly completely speculating here. You might have a county that says, hey, this is what you're saying is going on, and we're going with it. But you might also have a county that says, you're living in a foster home. How are you purchasing and preparing separately? I don't know. But they can definitely try. They can definitely try. And just remember, the rule of thumb, if they're purchasing and preparing food separately from the people they live with, then they are a household of one. All right. Does this work for folks who are much older, say 49 years old? 49-year-olds who were formerly in foster care. So, a 49-year-old can absolutely apply for CalFresh, and they do all the time, and their status as former foster youth kind of doesn't kind of affect them at all in this way. Now, if they're 49 and they're attending a college campus and they're participating in a campus support program for foster youth, maybe it could in that way, and that it could exempt them. But actually, as I'm saying this, I think 49, I think that's the outer age limit of what is defined as a student, actually. I'm going to look back here at my slides to make sure that I'm remembering this right. So students, so between the ages of 18 and 49. So basically, a 49-year-old, if they're enrolled at least half-time in college, and they're participating in a campus support program for former foster youth, they could be exempted from that student eligibility restriction. But when they turn 50, they wouldn't even have to worry about it, because they are outside of that what's defined as a college student. And then, are eligibility workers getting the same training? When I help our students fill out an application, I have left the income section blank so the student can discuss with eligibility workers during the interview. But if they're unaware of the different exemptions, should we just put the income data ourselves? So it's really a mix. So, the state issues information to the counties, and then the county leadership has their ways of disseminating that information down through the ranks of the various folks that work for them. And there's the eligibility workers, obviously, which are really key to having to know all the rules about, CalFresh and related issues. And so in some counties, I think the information has definitely reached the eligibility workers. I think in other counties, there might be some workers that it hasn't yet reached, because I do hear sometimes that there are, discrepancies about understanding the way to process a foster youth application as far as counting income. There's also one thing I want to flag for you, which is in counties where there is data sharing, where they use a data system where the CalFresh eligibility worker could actually look up in the computer system what that youth foster care payment is. There is something happening that's unfortunate, which is, if they're looking up and they're in a SILP and they're seeing that 923, well, that's fine. But if they're in THP+FC and they're looking it up and they're seeing, oh, it's over $3,000, and they're entering that as the unearned income, that's a problem. And so one thing that we have been trying to do is, like at the CWDA conference, we presented with the state, and the state has definitely been, trying to get this information out to counties, is making sure that they know that that is not the amount of the unearned income. And in that case, they actually need to look for like a letter from the provider stating what the direct stipend is. So there's a few things that I think can create obstacles, which is why it's so important for all of you guys to have this information, so that if a youth does encounter an eligibility worker that might just not have that information yet, that you can help clear it up for them. One thing is they can bring in a copy of the ACL and the ACIN that discusses all of these things that we talked about today, and say, hey, this is what the state has provided to counties. This is what I'm talking about here. This is what my income should be. And I suggest your question about should you be putting in the income. I think that it's best for the youth to, when they're applying, to not leave the income section blank. If they know what their income is, they put it in. I would put it in. Basically, you just need to know their unearned and their earned income, and they should be able to get that information. So I would say put it in with them. And if the eligibility worker is going through and feels like it's done wrong, they'll address that with the young person. Okay, so we are at 12:02, and so I think we're going to close the webinar. And like I said, I'll add that URL onto that slide that I mentioned, and I will send it out to everyone. But I think that's it, and the recording will be sent out as well. So I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the week, and I hope you all had a nice holiday. Thanks. Bye-bye.